All right, so welcome to the second developer bootcamp. So last time we kind of went through setting up a Git account. We talked through contributing to the documentation just directly using Git instead of using a development environment, so you don't even need your own development environment. We went through the process of configuring a site and setting up a new install. So I'm happy to go through any of that again, or if there's other topics that people would like to do, this is kind of for you all. So what would people like to see today? And feel free to either say it or chat it, and we can go through those topics. Okay, so Jonathan says that after he set up WAMP and cloned the repository, he tried running the PHP create site and got an error that PHP was not recognized. Okay, so the Bitnami installer does not automatically add PHP to the Windows environment, so we can add that to the Windows setup docs. That makes sense to me. So after, did you have to just like restart your computer to get PHP to be recognized? Okay, have to add it to the path and then restart. Yeah, that's good information to include. Do you want to make those changes to the setup documentation, or you want us to do it? We can either all walk through it together, or if you want to make them, that works as well. We can do that together. Are there other topics other people want to see? So we'll kind of go through the whole process of contributing again. So let me share a screen. Let's see. Okay. There we go. So we've got, you can see there's GitHub. Let's see. So we will need to either sign in with an account if you already have an account, or you can sign up. So let's try. So the sign up process, we walked through it last time. So if you're unclear, we can go through, you can watch last week's video, which is on our site. But basically you just go through, enter your email. I'm not gonna finish this because I already registered this. Continue, it'll give you the prompt for a username and all that kind of good stuff. So let's just sign in. So we're gonna sign in. We're going to see if I remember my password. I don't. One moment. Okay, let's share. Okay, so this, I'm already logged in with my main one. I'm going to log out and sign back in with my Bywater account. Okay, so there we go. So we're logged in. We have our repository. So this is my repository, my local fork of the main branch. So if I go there, we can easily see that right now I'm behind a little bit. So after you fork, the main branch is always making changes. So It generally has at least a couple of changes every day, so you'll need to update frequently. We walked through this a little bit last time as well, but basically in order to do that, you're going to click Fetch Upstream, and we'll just do a fetch and merge. So we'll do a fetch and merge. So now we are up to date with the main branch 210900. So now to go in and edit the help manual, we're going to go into code, and the manual is all within web and manual. So we've got two things. We've got in this directory, we've got the manual and we've got our release notes. So let's first go into the manual. And each of these pages, so if we look at the test site, we can go to the help manual. So go into Aspen admin and then the help manual, which is down at the bottom. So each of these pages, so we're going to add this to the installing on Windows page. You can get the file name to edit by looking at what the page is. So installing-aspen-windows matches the name of this. So we've got installing-aspen-windows.md. So everything will end with .md, all capital. The file name should be a mixture of regular words and dashes. Don't put in spaces or anything. So we can go into installing Aspen, and then we can edit this directly from GitHub. So we can go in, we can just click edit this file, and we can go down and say, let's see, so here, oh wait, sorry, we don't want installing on Aspen. We're going to cancel those changes. We're going to go back up to the manual, and this is going to be setting up a development environment. So we're going to go back to setting up your environment, which is just called development environment. So let's go up to development environment. So here we can just say, let's edit this, and let's just say, oh, let's see that if we can find a, so we're going to do, so we're just going to create a link. So we'll put the text that we want to be in brackets, and then the link destination. And instead of promoting any specific resource, I'm just going to do a Google search for how to add a file to the Windows path. I'm certainly, if anybody wants to make that better or give actual documentation, that'd be a great edit. So we will say, do that. And then after, Okay. Does that change look good? Step 4 does not match pass. Okay, so let's save that. So we're going to commit those changes so we can commit them directly to our 21.09. So there we've committed. And then Jonathan also says in step 4, we've got another path that doesn't match. So let's go back into that Windows. Installing Aspen on Windows. And let's edit this as well. So here on step, okay, so step 2 and step 4. Let's see. So this, yeah, so we want to clone the repository to C web. And then C, oh, correct. Yep, I see what you mean. So then we're going to go to C web, Aspen Discovery /install. All right, so let's go ahead and save those changes. So we'll commit that again. So now we want to publish those to the main branch. So we're going to go to pull requests. So we're going to create a new pull request. And we can see there's 2 files here that we've changed. So we've changed those 2. We can review our changes, which is really nice. I always, when I'm committing code, I do like to go through and read through those changes, make sure they all make sense, make sure I'm not checking in something I didn't expect or that I didn't want to do. So then once we're happy with that, we can create the pull request. We'll give it a title. We're going to say updating installation instructions for Windows. We will create that pull request. So there we go. So that's all set. If for some reason you didn't want that, you can always close it, which will remove it. So then I'm going to sign out and sign back in as my main. And I'm going to go back into that. We can see now I've got 1 pull request. So we'll look at the pull request. And then I can review all of the changes so I can see what files you've changed. And then either approve it, comment on it, request changes. So I'm going to approve this. And then I'm going to merge it in. And then I can push it out to any of the test servers. If you're working on local development, you would be seeing that right away. Any questions on doing development directly from GitHub without installing anything on your local machine? And feel free again to chat or to just unmute. All right, no questions that I see yet. So yeah, people think they'll start contributing some documentation changes soon, or does that feel like a fairly comfortable thing to do? Or we can go through it more too.
Yes, it's a matter of catching me on the right day.
Right.
I mean, I think there was at least once where I submitted a ticket and it probably wasted my time and your time. Because there was something there was a step missing that would have helped me in the documentation. So after that, I was like, well, I need to add that, right? And
Right.
but then I didn't, and I can't remember what that was.
Yes.
So like in the future, I can see myself doing that. I also believe when I kind of brought this topic up for, I was pro these workshops. It was kind of the idea of how to communicate to everyone in the community or Aspen users, hey, this is something that I'm going to work on, just so you know, right? And we kind of talked about the Slack is probably a great place to do that.
Yep.
I think that I'm good in that regard.
Cool. Good. Yeah. So yeah, especially if you're working on something major, like I would say definitely Slack and say, hey, we're going to work on this. If like just contributing a help page or something, chances are low that it's getting worked on at the same time. But I know Morgan and Addie are working on things we can do to make it easier to use, so it's possible. All right. Anything else for help or contributing without GitHub or with just GitHub? Right. And then last time we also went through how to a little bit about setting up Aspen on your local machine and creating a site for it. I'm happy to go through that again. We've got a bunch of new faces. Do people want to see that? What kind of other topics do people want to see?
So I would be happy to see that again. So my context here is that, my colleague James had created a local development environment for himself, and he gave me some notes and he said, create documentation from this. Now, in the meantime, y'all have done that, and I thank you very much. But from James's notes, one of the things that I was not able to do was successfully set up a development environment on my local machine.
Okay.
So I think with these workshops and the previous video, hopefully I will be able to do that.
Yeah.
So if you would go through it again, I would be interested in seeing that.
Sure. How far did you get through?
I made it to minute 35.
Okay.
Right now I am just on a test server using CentOS, and it felt like maybe you skipped the, run installer.sh and went right to create site, but I might have skipped ahead on that.
Oh, yeah, because I was setting up on a local machine.
Okay.
Which already has all of that installed.
Okay. Yeah. So, the documentation that you've created says to do that. And it's pretty simple. Like the things that, you get some prompts from Maria, but they're very self-explanatory.
I guess, would people prefer to see a setup on Windows, a setup on CentOS? Any preferences one way or the other?
I wouldn't mind seeing a Linux install.
Okay. Let's see, let me find.
As I'm sitting in front of a CentOS terminal, I vote for that. But really my goal, and these are some of the things that, I sort of arm wrestled with James about, is we really need documentation that will work for anything, right? If it gets too specific, I think that it's not super usable. But I don't know, you just have to, consider everything, right? If it's, you can make it very general, and then there's always just going to be little hangups that you can't anticipate, and it's not going to be that useful. So, but I'm all for just running through it again, just to see it.
Okay. I am just in the process real quick of setting up Let's see. I'm just going to set up, I'm allocating a new server real quick. So I'm just in Google Cloud now, which is where we've got a lot of our hosting, and it's busy on the back end creating a server, and then we can work through the install process. Let's see. While I'm doing that, if anybody has questions, it'll take me just a minute to get this set up. All right. Okay, that server is spinning up right now, and we'll be able to connect to it in just a second. Okay, so this is going to be just a little tiny CentOS server. And we have installs for CentOS or Debian or installation instructions. It should work on any ILS, but let's see, let's share. We're going to share that. All right, so you can see we are on the server now. I'm just in the other window, just opening up the help manual so that we can follow along. I'm going to not go back and forth, but like back and forth so that you can watch while we do it. But I will try to read off the instructions as we do them. All right, so we have the server set up. I'm just going to run sudo yum check update. So this will go through and update the server. And then we're going to do a yum-y install git. So we need something to be able to get all of our code with. So that's all set up. So now we're going to do a git clone so we're going to go to user local. And we're going to do a sudo git clone. Now, normally when we're setting up a server, we're going to use the main kind of master repository. For this, I'll go ahead and just use the one that I just created. Okay. So if you're following along, I'm now on step 3. So we're going to do a git clone, and then this is the repository. So github.com, my username. So in this case, I'm just using the mark-bywater instead of the mdnoble73. So aspendiscovery.git. So that's cloning. That's going to have the changes that we just made. Or it's my local repository, so I would be pushing to there. And it takes it a little while to pull all of the code. We're almost there. Okay, and then we're gonna so we're in user local, we'll go into Aspen Discovery. So that's where all of our code just got installed. So if we look here, we've got the same kind of setup. So let's do let's see. switch over to GitHub real quick, just so that we can see that it's the same. So here, I'm just going to sign out, sign back in as my Bywater account, and go into my, whoops, go back, go into my repository. So there we can see we've got code, data dir setup, documentation, install sites, tests, and then like the README file and that kind of thing. That is the same that we see if we go into the server itself. So when we go to the server itself, we see that same kind of directory structure. So we've got the README and that kind of thing. So now we're going to run the installer. So we're in Aspen Discovery. We're going to go to cd install, and we're going to run sudo./installer.shell. This will take a couple of minutes. Has anybody else started an install or?
I mean, the last year or two, I've done this a couple times.
Yeah. And where do you normally get stuck? Just.
I mean, with me, I think it's actually just with the lamp stack is where I actually have problems with.
Okay.
You know, it's this part here I am very comfortable with. It's just, you know, configuring everything else to make it work.
Right.
But that I think is on me, not on anyone else on this call. So.
Well, and I would say that's all gotten a lot easier over the last year, I hope. But if not, like, then let's update the scripts to make it easier. So. And I will say, if you're creating a server that's going to be accessible anywhere, like you're obviously going to want to set up SSL, you're going to want to block access. So your server, you can set up the firewalls so that they only allow traffic for port 80 or port 443 and 80 before you get SSL set up. So those are, we just need the web server to be accessible off the server. You don't need access to Solar. You don't need access to MySQL from off the server itself generally. So, or if you do, like, I would suggest locking that down as much as possible, just to make sure you don't have people getting onto your server. All right, we're almost done here, I think. Let's see, so we just got Java installed. We got unzip installed. I think we're close to the end, but I've said that before, so we'll see. What sort of contributions are people interested in making? Anybody have ideas of things to contribute yet?
I mean, as far as the documentation, one little hiccup that I encountered was being able to use the Bywater test site so there's uniformity among pictures if you wanted to add screenshots, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you don't work for Bywater, that could be a problem, right? If you're trying to show something. It could be that it's Bywater employees that make that call, whether to add a screenshot or to make a better screenshot to make it uniform, right?
Right.
So a contributor could add a screenshot, and I mean, a Bywater employee could substitute a different screenshot, right? Whenever they
Right.
commit, that kind of thing. That's just something that I ran into.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and I think probably part of that is like your institution's restrictions. So if your institution says, yeah, you're not going to put our logo anywhere, then it's just making sure that it's cropped appropriately. And we can, especially for people working on documentation, we're happy to provide access to one of our test servers so that you can create screenshots from there as well. So, okay, so we've got all of our base stuff done. We need to configure our system. So I know I'm going to throw this server away. So I am going to use less than secure passwords and stuff. And then I'm just going to go through and delete this. So we are going to set a root password. We are okay, so we're going to get rid of anonymous users. We are going to disallow root login remotely, just because we don't need anybody getting into our database from off the server. We are going to remove our test database. We are going to reload our privileges. So then we need to enter the time zone of the server. So this is wherever this server is running. So I'm just going to say that this is right now America/Denver. And we're all set. So we have gone through and we've set up the basics of the LAMP stack. And the last thing to do is to reboot the server. That's the last step of that. So we're just going to say reboot now. And as soon as that reboots, we will share it again. This will take a minute as it restarts. All right, we are back in. All right, so we are back on the server. We've been logged out, so we're back to our home directory. So we're going to go into user local Aspen Discovery, install, and we're just going to run create site. So there we go. We're going to start that process. This is going to prompt us for a bunch of information. Kirsten went through and updated a lot of this information so that it's hopefully easier to understand. So Bootcamp, we're going to just call this bootcamp.production. You could call it, so typically what we'll do, so when I'm doing local development, since I do it on my own web server, I typically call it whatever the library name is, .localhost. If I'm setting something up on a server that we're using for testing or development, I would call it like library.test, and then the production is library.production. So here we'll create we'll call it bootcamp.test. We're going to call this developer bootcamp, developer bootcamp. Let's see what IP address this is currently assigned to. Okay, so Google has gone through and assigned this an IP address. Which here, let's take. So if we do so we can access that via URL. Since nothing is set up or configured, we just get a regular, this is an Apache server message. And we will change that in just a second. So going back to our server. Oh, there we go. Back to our server. We're going to just say that this is going to be accessed. That's okay. http://34.122.107.231. This is not running on Windows. And for any of these, whatever's in capital, so if you get like a yes, no, the default is whatever's capitalized. So we're running on CentOS. We're going to run on 8080, which is the default. So you can either enter it or just hit return. I'm not going to connect this to any ILS right now. If you are on Koha, it will prompt you for additional information to have throughout the installation process. If you're hosted with Bywater, we can help get you that information and make sure that you have access. If you are not on Koha or you are not hosted, you'll need to get that information. But you can enter, in general, it's going to be Koha, Symfony, Carlex, all of those. So I'm just going to say none for now, which will be fine. Normally you will want to see this, or you will want to set that up properly. So if you have questions about setting that up, let us know. So there's not going to be a driver again. So normally though, this is going to be similar to the name. And again, if you need help setting these up, let us know. So I'm just going to say none. We'll just leave a bunch of this blank. Oh, we have to do that. Okay, that's not actually an OPAC, but the database name that we set up, so by default it creates, or it will create one. So unless you're setting up multiple sites on one, you can leave that set to the default of Aspen. We created a root user of root, and I gave it a password of Aspen earlier. So that was the step that we did earlier when it was asking for our root password. And then Denver. So then we create an Aspen admin user. that is designed specifically for these cases where, hey, we don't have an ILS to connect to, so we need another user. And you can create a password for that. So we'll give it Aspen since we're destroying this. Normally we would want something more secure than that. So now we're set up. So I'm going to do a new share. We're going to go back to our Apache server. So now when I refresh, we log in, we get an error, which is normal. So basically this is saying, hey, all the database updates haven't been run. So we're just going to log in with that Aspen admin user. And I'm just going to say, remember me, because I'm lazy. So we log in, and now we're going to go to our administration page. So that default user gets created with all access. Now we're going to go into database maintenance, and we're going to run all of these. And this will take a little bit again. All right, that's not too bad. It's much faster on an empty machine than something with stuff. You might get some errors. So there are things where like cleanup has already happened. But in general, everything's good. So there's a few things where just, yeah, that table no longer exists. So that's fine. We're all set up. It's worth scanning though, making sure that there's nothing where it's like, hey, we couldn't connect to a database or something, although you wouldn't get this far if you couldn't connect to the database. So that gets us in. Now, because we didn't set up an ILS, this is a very blank generic system. We can't really do anything with it. In order to start doing anything, well, I guess before I move on, any questions with how we got here or anything else anybody wants to see at this stage? Cool. Okay, so we didn't create any connection to our account or to our ILS yet. So what we would need to do if we were really doing this is we would go into the account profiles. We would add a new one for the ILS. We would tell it what kind of ILS we're connecting to, give it the appropriate driver, fill out all of the additional connection information. So normally we're going to have a database or SIP2 or some API information. And then we would fill out a record source of ILS is the traditional, unless you have more than one ILS, which right now nobody does, but we've done in the past. So then you would save those changes, and you would also create an indexing profile. So we would want an indexing profile that tells us how to index the MARC records from that. So we're going to add a new one. We'd call it ILS. We're going to give it a MARC path, which is traditionally data, Aspen Discovery, the name of the site. So in this case, it's going to be bootcamp.test, I think we called it, /ILS/MARC. The individual MARC path would be MARC rex. Then you will figure out like if things are grouping different or if you need different record drivers. All of those like will depend, a lot of this configuration is going to depend on your ILS. So like these are things we go through during the initial setup. And for Koha, it fills it all out for you. For others, you may need to change, like, are we getting our record number? Is the unique number in the 001? Is it in a 900? We'll need to fill all that out. Typically, this is stuff that we set up for people before, like during your implementation. I think I can go ahead and just save that. Yeah. The other thing you would want to do is go into your library systems. So it gets created with a default one just called the main, just so that we have something to attach it to. But you would want to customize this for your setup. So you'd want to fill out as many as you have, and make sure all of the information is appropriate. The other thing you'd want to do is make sure that the records to include and records owned. So in this case, I'm just going to say this location owns everything. And then we would need to set up our locations. Again, it comes with just a default main one, which we're going to also say includes everything. And then you'd be able to run indexing. Typically, if you're using this for development, you're going to be loading a copy of the database from your production environment, or setting up a lot of the information from your production site. So let's see, other things that you need to do. So as part of that indexing profile, you'd also be creating any of your translations. So if we go back into ILS integration and go to our indexing profiles, depending on your ILS, you're going to need to create different translation maps. And you'd certainly want to change like your format and your status mapping so that we know what those all are. There's a reCAPTCHA that you can get. So, which is just a way, so if we have people doing things who aren't logged in, we'll show a CAPTCHA just to reduce spam and that kind of thing. Then once everything is set up, let's do another new share. So once everything gets set up, if we go back to the user local Aspen Discovery, we're going to go into code. And there's different indexers. Yeah, now it's a little easier to see. There's a bunch of different indexers there that we can run. So we can run things like Access 360, CarLX. So there's one per ILS. So you can run your Koha export, you can run Horizon, CarLX, Polaris, whatever you're on. So to run those, we're just going to go to CD. So I will show, obviously this is not set up. So we'll go to the Koha export. In order to run this, you're going to do a sudo. So we've got an Aspen user that runs most things. So we're going to do a sudo run user -u aspen -java -jar koha export.jar. We're going to give it the name of the bootcamp.test. And then that's just going to start the indexer. It is going to fail here. So it's saying, hey, we can't connect to the Koha database because there isn't one. So that is not surprising. So it will go and run. These are designed to run in the background. And they are designed to start from cron based off the modules you have turned on. So I'm not gonna, I'm going to stop that now. So that's how you would run your indexer. There is also Cron and SSL. So SSL, if you are just doing local development and nobody can access it from off your machine anyway, you don't really have to set up SSL. If it's anything like this where it is a public server, then you would want to set that up. And it's kind of up to you, whatever service you want to use to get SSL certificates. Let's Encrypt is a great free source for setting up SSL certificates that is very reliable and lots of people use. So that gets us up and running with a development server. I personally don't like editing code from the command line if I don't have to, because it's just inefficient. But you certainly can. So if I wanted to go through and make a update to the manual, so we're just in the user local Aspen Discovery code. Or I guess before I do this, any other questions? Anything else anybody wants to see? Everybody awake? Okay. CD web, CD manual. So here's our manual. So same files that we saw before. These are all of our manuals. So what do we want to edit? So installing Aspen Linux. We can definitely edit this on the command line. So we can go through, we can do all of our edits. I'm just going to do something that we are going to commit and then revert. Please don't check in Hi from Linux for actual use. But so now it's done. If we, so we've, since this is our development server, we can go to back to our server. We're going to go into our own help manual. And we're going to go down now to our installing on Linux. And we've got our Hi from Linux. So we have made a change to the code. It appears on our server. So that's a really simple change. Let's do another new share. So we're going to go back to the server. If we decide we don't like that, we can just say git checkout. So we can just say check it out again. And then when we go in, that change that we made is now gone. So it's wiped out that change for us. So it's easy to go through and say what has changed or what have I changed compared to what we last got out of the Git repository. So you can see all of your local changes. Any questions on any of that? Oh, we've got a couple of people that are awake. Good. What else do people want to see? We can show actually committing a change. If I was really good, I would have found a bug that like could be fixed easily. All right, let's find a change. Okay, so let's find an easy change that we can make that does not require an index. I'm drawing a blank. Okay, we will do another semi-fake change. Let's see. I can't think of any good changes to make right now off the top of my head. So anybody have a good idea for something quick and easy? You got an idea, Brian?
I was just going to say earlier when we were making the change, did we add the path part that Jonathan pointed out and the fact that step 2 and step 4 do not match?
Yeah.
We did both of those.
We did. Let's see. So I'm sure we can find something in a help file. Let's just go to okay, well, let's just update the release notes to say that we changed, that we updated information in the help manual to include additional information for setting up Windows. So go back to the server. And then there was a question about do I install a Git or use a Git client for Linux? I don't, but I also don't actually do any development in Linux. I have a policy of my own that says I'm doing all of my development on my local machine, and then I'm pushing to the servers for testing. So I very, very rarely am developing on Linux itself. And I'm very, very rarely committing from Linux. We do every once in a while, but in those cases, it's easier for me to just use the command line tools. So let's go back into the manual. And Aspen Linux. So let's just say, or no, sorry, we were going to go to the, we're going to go to the release notes. So that's in user local Aspen Discovery code web release notes. We have a whole bunch of files now. They are conveniently named after the release. So we're going to edit that, and I'm just going to add a section for help manual updates. Updated help manual. My release notes there is longer than the actual change we made. I'm also going to move that change up here, and we'll just have a help manual section. Okay. So we can run a Git Status, which will tell us what changes have been made. So this is saying, hey, we've changed. So there were some htaccess files that just have permissions changed. We modified our main file, and we added, there's a sites directory that gets created that gives us information about the configuration, just kind of to get us going. And it's got links to like startup scripts and that kind of thing. So we're going to do a sudo git add 21.09.00 and then git commit, give it a message. Just says updated release notes. Okay, and then we need to update our config file. Okay, so now it's authored. Okay, and that's committed. Sorry.
You're muted, Mark.
Thank you. So, it only happens during the meetings, right? So, we'll push this back to our origin with git. This is again something I don't do. Let's see. We'll just okay. I don't remember my password, so we would push this to the server, and then we could do the same request to pull request. Kirsten, do you have any thoughts on pushing or anything you do differently since you do this process more than like?
No, because I use a client.
Yeah. This is all much easier with the client.
I will add, if you are planning on using Git from the CLI often to GitHub, you'll want to set up a SSH key pub key authentication. That way it's not going to prompt for passwords all the time.
Right. Good. Thanks, Rudy. What else do people want to see? Yeah. Anything else anybody wants to see, or we'll look for pull requests coming our way.
Thank you. This was really good.
Good. I'm glad it's helpful. So, yeah, if anybody needs anything, feel free to ping us. Just send in a ticket, Slack us on the developer workspace. So, cool. Well, if nobody has anything else, I'll give you back 45 minutes to your day. All right. Thanks, everyone.